Super Tuesday is upon us, folks. That's right. Tonight, people in a number of states will go to the polls and decide who it is that is going to lead us possibly into oblivion. Let's be realistic. We all know what's going to happen here. I'm not going to do a lot of coverage of Super Tuesday and the results based on the fact that at the end of the night, Trump is going to win every single state on the ballot. Biden's going to win every single state on the ballot, and we don't know if Nikki Haley will drop out. But we will talk about some of the predictions and some of the political winds shifting as we go into Super Tuesday and the polling results as such. In other news, possibly the biggest news of the week, Donald Trump wins his court case about staying on the ballot in Colorado and Maine and Illinois. We'll be talking about what the narrow decision is, what it means for the political situation, what it means going forward, and we're going to laugh at the meltdown that our friends on the left finally had 2 or 3 hours after they found out about this whole thing, which kind of tells me that a lot of them had to wait for marching orders to decide what it is they were supposed to feel about this. So we'll go over some of that, some of the fun there, and where we go with this. Mitch McConnell steps down from the Senate in what I thought and hoped was going to be the big news of the day. We'll talk about what's happening there, what this means politically going forward, and what is going to happen next. And the CDC is doing what the rest of the country did 3 years ago. They are ending their isolation guidance and saying, you know what, just treat it like the flu. We're going to talk about that. It's going to be all of this and more. So, grab some friends, strap yourselves in, hang out, find some food, and we'll talk about what's happening on the other side of the break. And I've got your picture. I'm coming with you. Dear Maria, count me in. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a lot to go over here today. Now, the stack, once we get over into the news scene, is going to look a lot more full than it usually does because there are a lot of tabs open right now. I'm going to be completely realistic with you at this point. A lot of this is just various crap from X of us, and it's going to be short because, I mean, the whole point of X was microblogging and making these short little clips about how you feel. And with that being said, as we go into this, we're coming out to the situation of it's going to be mostly us making fun of leftoids, and it's going to be lickety split, I think. I think we're going to spend the most time on Olbermann because he's got 3 memorable posts up there. We're going to be talking about that in the wake of the Supreme Court decision. We've got Stupid Tuesday news. We've got political shifting news, and not just McConnell either, by the way. Kyrsten Sinema stepping down, making that announcement today. So we'll be talking about that, how that affects everything here. I have not even read into an article for that. That's one I have not pre-read, so we'll be talking about that for the first time together tonight, so that'll be a little bit of fun. A weird hazing incident at a school that was supposed to be for a fundraiser. We're going to talk about that in Oklahoma, of all places, the IRS. That's going to be on the top of mind. We got a lot to go over here today. Plus, we got things that I like and things that I hate too. So it's going to be a full night for sure. I don't know how much traction we are going to get tonight. I'm going to be completely honest about this, and I'm looking at my main screen right now where the news is, and I've got an X from over on talking about Super Tuesday and some of the exit polling results for there. And I know that Styx is streaming right now. I know that Pool is streaming right now. I'm sure that one of the Daily Wire guys probably wants to come out and cover and be the first one to talk about the results on Super Tuesday. I can tell you at the top of the show, before I see any exit polling here whatsoever, and we'll talk about DC too, by the way, but tonight, Nikki Haley is not going to walk away with a single state. Full stop. Biden is going to get every single state. Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson are not. Now, Marianne Williamson might have an outsized performance in Vermont because they have their own progressive ballot and caucus, but I mean, we know what's going to happen. We're in general election mode. Super Tuesday is kind of an afterthought at this point, which I can't believe I'm saying at this point, with as demented as our former president is. And I mean, if you listen to the Ron bros out there, how much the world absolutely hates Donald Trump and how much he's not the conservative candidate we deserve. Yeah, that's a temper tantrum too, but we'll be talking about that. A lot of stuff here, IRS stuff. Texas, by the way, that almost slipped notice, but Texas was briefly allowed to start arresting and detaining migrants and over the border, and the Supreme Court stepped in and said, no, not yet. We've got to review this here. It's a weird week politically because, I mean, that was basically a favor to Biden. We'll be talking about that towards the bottom of the show. Plus, we've got things I like and things that I hate over here in Contemporary. And you will probably see, and I mean, as I flip around, no, it's out of camera, actually. It's out of shot. But behind me, there is the first product that will be drinkable. Now, it's not drinkable yet. The carbonation is going to take a week, but you will see at the bottom of the show my first bottle of hard cider tonight, too. So, lots to go over here today. Grab a drink, grab a hard cider. It won't be a 100 Acres hard cider, of course, but grab a hard cider. Get a glass of wine, get a beer. I have to work early in the morning, so I can't. Plus, I don't know if I even have it. No, I do have some Strongbow, I think, over here. I'm using the Strongbow bottles. Whoops. Just because once they're cleaning out and they've got the thick top, they're free. Still have to get the labels off some of them, but I have filibustered long enough. We've got to get in, we've got to get started, and we have got to talk about what's going on in the news. Feel free to chat about what it is that you see here tonight. I check in with the chat in between topics and in between articles and basically everything else that we do. So the more you chat, the more we get promoted out to the front page, and well, that's the way that we compete, is to get out to the front page. So let your feelings be heard over here on Contemporary, and also take some time and go check out great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus and Overruled with KTZed. I put my full endorsement behind both of those programs. They are fantastic friends of mine. They do a wonderful job, and go and check them out. So that's what we have for that. And let's get into the news of the day. We're going to start by talking about Stupid Tuesday, with a couple articles about that. Let's get into it. Starting with conspiracy news, maybe. We don't know. Facebook was actually down, and Instagram as well was down during the middle of the day today, and people were complaining about the fact that they couldn't come out and even do any messaging, which makes me believe that there might be something election involved with this, because I don't know if it's going to be poll watchers, I don't know if it's going to be organizing a get out the vote rally with right-wingers. I don't know what it is that could have been off of this, but it's very convenient that Facebook and Instagram were both down for 4 hours in the middle of Super Tuesday. Let's talk about what's going on with that, though, shall we? Let's get the chat back up here just in case somebody does want to come back in and weigh in. All right. From the USA Today, was Facebook down on Super Tuesday? Users reported outages on primary election day, from Jonathan Limehouse. The Boomer Book users may have encountered the social media site not working properly on the morning of Stupid Tuesday. Facebook blamed a technical issue for the site being down. That's not Zuckerberg, but we're going to do this in Zuckerberg voice anyway. Earlier today, a technical issue caused people to have difficulty accessing some of our services. Andy Stone, speaking for Mark Zuckerberg, the Director of Communications for Meta, said in an X post, the irony and the fun of that is just in and of itself. We resolved the issue quickly as possible for everyone who was. We resolved the issue as quickly as possible for everyone who was impacted, and we apologize for any inconvenience, he said on X. Around 0900 Eastern Time, hundreds of thousands of users reported Facebook being down during one of the biggest election days of the year, according to Down Detector. Many users were reporting being logged out of Facebook accounts with no ability to log back in. By 11:45, many users were reporting their service was resuming as normal, Stone said in an X post, before reports dwindled. We are aware people are having trouble accessing our services. We are working on this now. The USA Today contacted Meta, formerly known as Facebook Incorporated, but did not receive an immediate response. In addition to Facebook's outages, users of Meta-owned apps, Instagram and WhatsApp, were also experiencing issues. And of course, it's on one of the biggest election days of the year, where people were indeed trying to coordinate how to get out to the polls, how to get out the vote, how to get into a large amount of things for that. So, I don't know. There's questions that I have about this. I don't particularly trust Zuckerberg. I don't use the Boomer Book, but I do use Instagram. Some people were watching on the replay on Instagram right now. There's nobody watching on Instagram right now, but we are broadcasting live to Instagram as well as Twitch and YouTube and DLive. Actually, no, I think my DLive finally cut off. We are actually transmitting to Facebook too, but I've never gone on to check the numbers on that, so I don't know where that goes and who sees what and who sees where, but we're apparently transmitting there. Someday I should log into my fan page just for the fuck of it, you know? But, well, people have questions and they're rightly concerned to be. I mean, what did we see in 2020? Hong Kong. Nothing wrong happening, but if something wrong could have been happening, it might have been all the Zuckerbucks that were pouring into the election. Hong Kong. I owe something to Falling Stars and I don't know what it is. I have not fixed the emote thing yet. I know, and I said on the stream I was going to. After I worked on Saturday, I got back up on Sunday and I was going nonstop, and Monday I was going nonstop too. Unfortunately. But yes, you can alternate your emotes, just not run the same ones. I will fix it. I promise. I will fix it. I will fix it. If I keep reminding myself, I'll do it. Maybe. I hope. This next article here. This is not the way, by the way, to convince people that you are not in some sort of conspiracy with the White House. Now, do I believe that Taylor is in a conspiracy with the White House? No, I don't. I'll come back out and say this, but she keeps doing things that make it look like she's in a conspiracy with the White House. From Fox News, Taylor Swift has a message for Super Tuesday voters as Trump, Haley, and Biden compete. From Lawrence Richard over at Fox News. Taylor Swift is urging people to head to the polls on Super Tuesday and vote in their party's respective presidential primaries. Today, March 5th, is a presidential primary in Tennessee and 16 other states and territories. Look, I want to remind you guys to vote in who most represent you and the power. Well, I can't do that because there's nobody like that running. She wrote on an Instagram story, if you haven't already, make a plan to vote today. Right before Instagram went down, actually. She added, whether you're in Tennessee or somewhere else in the U.S., check your polling places and times at vote.org. Former President Trump and Nikki Haley are competing in the Republican primary for what? We have no fucking idea. With President Biden running to secure the Democratic nomination. Alright, we actually have a list. I said earlier, I said several states because I actually didn't know how many states were voting today. Voters will head to the polls in Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, next door, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia. Wow. My guess when I was still at work was actually absolutely right. I said to one of my coworkers right before I left that it was Stupid Tuesday because voters from, and I said, like 15 states were going to the polls today. And yeah, it was exactly 15 states. Plus American Samoa also vote. Most polls will close around 1900 or 2000 hours local time. So do keep that in mind. I am not in the state on that list. My next door neighbors are, but I am not. We have got one from our friends over at NPR. And remember, NPR is only 10% government funded and they need your support. The ads don't drive them in nearly as much as they need to be. So hit that donate button and tell them that you hate capitalism and you want communism and progressivism. And that's the only way to spread it around the world is for you to hit that donate button, because remember, comrade, it is not your money, it is our money. And on Super Tuesday, abortion is driving Democrats to the polls in North Carolina. This is from Morning Edition with Tamara Keith and Jong-Yoon Han. Let's see what it is they have to say. Nicole Sidman walked up a long driveway in a hilly suburban neighborhood in Charlotte, campaign flyers in hand, ready to talk about an issue that prompted her to run in the Democratic primary for the state legislature this year. A chubby white chihuahua named Frankie came running. When she rang the bell, Rebecca Rubenstein opened the door. "I know who you are," Rubenstein told Sidman. Rubenstein, who has 3 daughters, quickly told Sidman she plans to vote for her and will bring her 8-year-old daughter to the polls to be part of the movement she described as critical. "For my children to be able to have the right, now and in the future, anytime, to make the choice about their own bodies is essential." Oh my God. That right there just makes me want to die in and of itself. You're telling an 8-year-old that the ability, and whether or not you think that it's slaughtering your own young or just a clump of cells, you're going to take an 8-year-old to the polls and say, if you get fucked and forget to use a condom, you can go back out and do whatever it is that you want to do. It's an 8-year-old. Why? Why? Somebody explain this to me. Why? But hey, this is where the books and the libraries thing comes from, so. Like, I could see if you're talking about a 14-year-old. And you're taking your 14-year-old to the polls because of a pivotal moment. This child is 8. Concerns about the new restrictions on abortion are motivating voters and candidates alike in North Carolina primary races. It's an issue that Biden campaign hopes will energize voters not just on Stupid Tuesday, but also November's presidential election. And that is going to be a factor, by the way, in some states. My state, it is no longer going to be a factor. They stupidly ran to ram this out and make this all unconstitutional because, well, I guess they didn't learn from states like Kansas. And by the way, in Ohio and Kansas, it's not going to be an issue either, because they solved it already. It's part of the reason, by the way, politicians don't solve problems, because people they can't milk that problem anymore. That's part of the reason that they never passed the congressional nationwide Roe versus Wade, because they intended to run on it forever. And they're still going to run on it forever. They're never going to pass it in Congress, by the way. They're going to run on that forever. Only one Democratic candidate has won his state in modern times. Former President Barack Obama in 2008 by the narrowest of margins. Democratic Governor Roy Cooper said he believes the issue will put North Carolina in play. He isn't running this time. The state has term limits, but the race to replace him is shaping up to be a barn burner. And a Republican supermajority in the state legislature is on the line too. When you add issues like reproductive freedom, when you add the biggest governor's race in the country, not even fucking close, by the way, those things I think come together to make North Carolina ground zero in 2024, Cooper told NPR in an interview at the governor's mansion in Raleigh. You can care about more than one issue, but we're going to put this one up forefront because that gets people out to them there polls. But this is one where we need to make clear about the stark difference between Republicans and Democrats. Women's reproductive freedom depends on getting Democrats elected across this country, and particularly North Carolina, Cooper said. Because I didn't fix the Nightbot, and I told you I didn't, and I apologize again for that. That's what Falling Stars put up on the screen. Well, you can see it in the margins too, by the way. I need to remember to fix that. God damn it. 1,000 lashes, 1,000 lashes, 1,000 lashes. That's me. That's on me. That's my fault. There may be no place in the state where voters are more acutely aware of the stakes. Wait, no, that's not Cooper talking. Where people are more acutely aware of the stakes in the abortion debate than in and around Charlotte. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe, other southern states passed abortion restrictions for nearly a year. North Carolina still allowed the procedure up to 20 weeks. But then a Democratic State House representative from Charlotte, Tricia Cotham, switched parties and gave Republicans a decisive supermajority that allowed a 12-week ban with limited exceptions to pass, one that the governor could not overturn with a veto. Which is weird because we keep getting told that we are supposed to model ourselves after Europe. Our moral betters in Europe. And 12 to 15 is the standard in Europe. So, for the primary, by the way, this is not going to be a huge issue. Because, I mean, if you're picking up a Democrat ballot, you're basically staying on Democrats, and all the Democrats are in line with that. And if you're picking up a Republican ballot, realistically, the propaganda machine has shown Nikki Haley to be, and she's not, by the way, to be just as draconian on this, though, as evil Donald Trump, neither of whom really give a fuck about a national ban. Nikki Haley actually coming out and probably being just about as pro-abortion as Joe Biden is. But that's not what the media will paint for you, and they'll tell you that they're both. Moment of conception. So, that is what we have for that. Some exit polling here, which I'm going to come right out and say, I don't believe that this guy was a real Trump voter. I'm pretty sure that they just picked up a Democrat out there and said, here, say this. But Breaking 911 says, Super Tuesday voter, Nikki Haley don't have no balls to scratch. All the woman is good for in my book is having babies and taking care of the house. Let's listen.
What do you think of Nikki Haley? Did you ever consider her?
What I got to say, you don't really want to put it on.
Let me hear it.
Well, the woman's not going to be a good.
Well, yeah, let me hear it, because we totally didn't pick you to say this because we wanted to. We either fed you a script or we know what you're going to say.
The president, she don't have no balls to scratch. She's just going to scratch her head. All the woman's good for in my book is having babies and taking care of the house, but that's the old thing, but I'm old school.
So you never even considered her?
No.
Mainly because she's a woman?
Because she's female. I mean, females, don't take me wrong, females know what they're doing, but they still got to have a little bit of guidance. Trump would be the one to guide her through the...
What do you think of Nikki Haley? Did you ever consider her?
There is no way. There is zero. There is no way. that this was not staged and planned. There is absolutely zero way. I don't believe you. I'm coming right out and saying it. I don't fucking believe you. Yeah, central casting BS. Vong Star says. And Vong, I mean, I figured that's where Vong was going to go with this too. Having kids and take care of the house, based. Yeah, but like they're not going to put an actual base person on here. They're going to come up and say, here, we'll pay you $10 to say you're a Trump supporter and say that you hate women. All right, still some more Super Tuesday news. A.G. Garland. Daily Wire reporting A.G. Garland calls voter ID laws unnecessary. Hank Berrien reporting with a video. Speaking on Sunday at Selma, Alabama, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland decried efforts by states to implement voter ID requirements as discriminatory, burdensome, and unnecessary. I have never heard a good argument as to why a black man can't get an ID. I've heard some actual passable ones, but it affects such a small minority that it's a statistical blip. There are some elder black people in the South still from Jim Crow time that were born at home and not in the hospital, that don't have a birth certificate and cannot get government documents, and have lived as close to off-grid as they could for basically the vast majority of their lives. That is such a bit of statistical anomaly noise that should not be what's driving the majority. I'm an individualist, and even I can see that. Garland spoke in an event at the Tabernacle Baptist Church to commemorate the 59th anniversary of Selma police officers attacking demonstrators in the civil rights movement. There are many things that are open to debate in America, Garland declared. One thing that must not be open for debate is the right of all eligible citizens to vote and to have their vote counted. Garland did not define what he meant by eligible. Well, what he defined is anybody that would vote for us.
The right to vote is still under attack. And that is why the Justice Department is fighting back. That is why one of the first things I did when I came into office was to double the size of the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. That is why we are challenging efforts by states and jurisdictions to implement discriminatory, burdensome, and unnecessary restrictions on access to the ballot, including those related to mail-in voting, the use of drop boxes, and voter ID requirements. That is why we are working to block the adoption of discriminatory redistricting plans that dilute the vote
that you have no right to block and get involved in the first place, because that is a state's legislation issue. The 9th and 10th Amendments are very clear about that. So is Article 1 of the Constitution.
Of black voters and other voters of color.
"36 state laws request or require voters to show some form of identification at the polls. The National Conference of State Legislatures notes 14 states and D.C. do not require documentation to vote at the polls." So, there's that. I mean, this argument has been going on for a while. The hardest thing with this for me, and I pointed this out in one-off videos numerous times. In 2004, when I voted the first time in my life in a presidential election, because I did not turn 18, well, that was presidential. I did go local for that one, because I didn't turn 18 until April of 2002, which meant that I was not eligible for the 2000 election Bush v. Gore. So when I was taken to the polling place in '04 to go and vote for the first time, all that I needed to do was have a piece of mail with my address that determined my residency. The problem with that being, of course, is that at the time I was getting bills, and it had to be a piece of official mail, but I was getting bills in 3 different places. My parents' house, in small town America on the other side of the state, my aunt's house in central Kenosha, and actually my college dorm, or college apartment I should say, on the other side of town in a completely different district. Same congressional district, but my local alder districts, and I think the county district would have been different. I could have voted in 3 different polling locations at that time. The thing with voter ID that I always say should make that the standard for things is you pick up your ID, your driver's license, which I'm obviously not going to show mine on camera because I don't put my last name out there because my mom and dad, my sister did not ask to be in this arena. I did. So the longer I can await letting people know that I'm connected to them, the better off I think that they're going to be. But with that being said, I mean, you pick up your ID, the first thing it shows is your picture, so everybody knows that it's you. The second thing that shows is your name, and the third thing that it shows is your address. That in and of itself should make it the standard, because then you know by your address exactly what district you're in for not only presidential and congressional, because those are very broad swaths, but county board members, county executive, alder people. If you're in a situation where that is, like Kenosha especially. There were, I think, 10 different city districts for alder in Kenosha. A friend of mine, somebody who's actually hung out in the chat with you guys a little bit before, she was one of the first people to put it out there back when I still used the Boomer book when I was in my 20s. To come back out and say, okay, how do I know which polling location to go to? Whether it be this or this or this or this. And I responded, I said, you will go to the one that corresponds with your primary residence, the one that's on your driver's license. This was before voter ID passed, by the way. You go to the one that corresponds with the address that's on your driver's license. And that's where you vote from, because she was in another situation where she got mail sometimes at her parents' house and sometimes, I don't remember what, I know she was out of college at that point, but she got mail somewhere else in the city too. So yeah, it's what's on your driver's license, and that just, it makes it easy because we all have one driver's license. Therefore, that establishes our primary residence and where our vote goes. If it was just a presidential election, nothing else, you could come back and make the argument for it. Because you're always within the state with the electoral college, it still fits there and everything, and as long as you're voting somewhere in my case, the state of Wisconsin, your vote goes to the presidential election, the electoral college for the state of Wisconsin. But again, down ballot, there's so many other things that affect you. And you should be wanting to vote for the politicians, I can't believe I'm about to say these words, whose decisions affect you the most directly. But they're going to continue to do this, and it's always going to come from one side too, which I think is a little bit funny and a little bit on the nose. Yeah, Falling Star says, Garland, you don't say. Vog says, these morons are getting the first rule of war. If you know yourself and you know your enemy, you shall not be imperiled in 1,000 battles. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And he also says, gosh, however, as another military genius said, gosh, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Gosh. Napoleon died. No, wait, that doesn't say dynamite, that says Bonaparte. Wrong Napoleon. Vong says Merrick Garland shouldn't have been able to pass the bar exam. Seriously, who is this absolute clown and who gave him a JD? Does he have a Jack Daniels in this picture? Or is JD something else? I guess I don't know that acronym. He's clearly never heard of Crawford versus Marion County Election Board. Clearly. Well, there are a lot of things that he's never heard of because it's not because he actually hasn't heard of them, it's just not convenient for his narrative. In news that should surprise nobody at all. And of course, news that's going to give her a little bit of, hey, yes we can, and we're going to go through and win every state in Super Tuesday now. Nikki Haley wins the District of Columbia's Republican primary and gets her first 2024 victory. From Meg Kinnard and Will Weissert. Juris Doctor, okay. I guess I've never heard it called a Juris Doctor. But, okay, a law degree, I understand. I've never heard that term. Learn something new every day. It's kind of sad because one of the things that I was trying to get pressure to go down to get was a law degree. I thought about it too. I've thought about it recently. What's to stop me from taking the bar? I could probably pass it, that's the worst thing. Alright. Nikki Haley has won the Republican primary of the District of Columbia, notching her first victory in the 2024 campaign. Her victory Sunday at least temporarily halts Trump's sweep of the GOP voting contests, although the former president is likely to pick up several hundred more delegates in this week's Super Tuesday races. Despite her early losses, Haley has said she would remain in the race, at least through those contests, though she has declined to name any primary that she felt confident that she would win. Following her loss in the home state of South Carolina, Haley remained adamant that voters in the places that follow deserve an alternative to Trump despite his dominance thus far in the campaign. Well, they don't have one, unfortunately, because you suck. But I don't believe that Haley is staying in, of course, and I've said this before, to win. Because as long as she's in the race, the mainstream media is never going to look at the general election and the matchup there. Because even if she can't get a single delegate, which she does have delegates now, but even if she can't win a single state race and can only get the District of Columbia, every time there's a primary coming up, the news media stops. They stop looking at Biden, they stop looking at the border crisis, they stop looking at the Lake and Riley case, and they come out and say, how much of the vote is Nikki Haley going to steal this time? And trust me, once she does drop out, if she does drop out, and I do think she's going to stay till the end, they're not going to have that to hide behind anymore. The primary is going to come up, and while we could sit down and talk about, well, how many votes is Ron DeSantis going to get this time, or stupid shit like that, the focus is still going to be on what stupid thing Trump said, what the lawfare is going against him, and yes, to an extent of what the person in office is actually doing. I hate boxes and tests, but I love games. It's not surprising that Republicans closest to DC and its dysfunction are rejecting Trump and all his chaos. Haley spokesperson Olivia Perez Cubas said in a statement, noting that Haley became the first woman to win a Republican primary in history. Washington is one of those most heavily Democratic jurisdictions in the nation, with only about 23,000 registered Republicans in the city. And, I was just actually listening to a documentary on DC statehood while I was climbing the mountain on Sunday. Sunday? What day did I climb the mountain? Saturday, because it got cold again on Sunday. Yes. No? No, I did climb on Sunday because it got cold again on Monday. Wow, my days are running together here, folks. 'Cause Saturday I worked and then I just took a nap after that. But yeah, there are like almost 800,000 people in DC and only 23,000 registered Republicans. DM Ryan is here. Welcome in. Happy Stupid Tuesday. Trump's campaign issued a statement shortly after Haley's victory, sarcastically congratulating her on being named Queen of the Swamp by the lobbyists and DC insiders that want to protect the failed status quo. So, there you go. She got a primary race. It's not a state, but she got a primary race. I bet you if I looked at the results that are pouring in right now, she wouldn't even be close otherwise. And more Haley news here. And the last news we get before we get into the big news of the week. From the Daily Wire, Haley says she's no longer bound to honor pledge to support Trump if he wins the nomination. Which is fine because I don't know why it actually matters. And we have video of this one too. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley suggested on Sunday that she may no longer honor the Republican National Committee pledge that she signed last year to support the eventual GOP presidential nominee because she believes the RNC is becoming too close to former President Trump. Haley, who has yet to come close to beating Trump or any of the GOP primary and caucuses thus far, made the remarks during a Sunday interview on Meet the Depressed with Kristen Welker. You did sign a pledge, an RNC pledge to support the eventual nominee, Welker said. You still feel bound by that pledge. I have always said that I have serious concerns about Donald Trump, Haley responded, even when she was working for him. I have even more concerns about Joe Biden. Let's watch.
Have you taken the prospect, the possibility of endorsing him off the table at this point?
It's not anything I think about. What I have said
But is it off the table, Ambassador? It sounds like you are in a different place. Are people misinterpreting what you're saying? Have you moved to a place where you're no longer planning to endorse him?
Well, I think, first of all, if you talk about an endorsement, you're talking about a loss. I don't think like that. When you're in a race, you don't think about losing. You think about continuing to go forward. What I can tell you is I don't think Donald Trump or Joe Biden should be president. I don't think that we need two candidates in their 80s. I don't think we want a Joe Biden who calls his opponents fascists or a Donald Trump who calls his opponents vermin. No one wants that. I think people want a new generational leader that is going to go back to what the American dream is, what we want for our kids, in a place that's something that we can be proud of again.
Let me try it this way.
What I want for my kids is a situation where inflation is low and can stay low for most of their lives, low taxes, low government involvement. I know that last one I can't get with Trump because there are too many people that want him involved in every aspect of their lives. And that's not something you're going to get from Nikki Haley or Joe Biden. And I don't even like Trump. And I know that he is the closest one to that. And by the way, quick update over here from the Discord. And if you're not in the Discord, click on the links that you will find in the description of every platform and scrolling by you occasionally in the Twitch chat, and come join the Discord and come join the conversation with us here. Looks like North Carolina and Virginia have both already projected the winner with 8% and 0% of the votes in.
You did sign a pledge, an RNC pledge, to support the eventual nominee. Do you still feel bound by that pledge?
I have always said that I have serious concerns about Donald Trump. I have even more concerns about Joe Biden.
So is that a no? Are you bound by the RNC pledge?
The RNC pledge, I mean, at the time of the debate, we had to take it to where, would you support the nominee? And you had to, in order to get on that debate stage, you said yes. The RNC is now not the same RNC.
I said whatever I could to get the power. Is this the person that you really want running the country? I signed the pledge with my fingers crossed behind my back.
Now it's
So you're no
Trump's
longer bound
daughter-in-law.
by that pledge.
No, I think I'll make what decision I want to make, but that's not something I'm thinking about. And I think that while y'all think about that, I'm looking at the fact that we had thousands of people in Virginia. We're headed to North Carolina. We're going to continue to go to Vermont and Maine and all these states to go and show people that there is a path forward. And so I don't look at what ifs. I look at how do we continue the conversation.
Have you taken...
No, if you're going to Virginia and Vermont and North Carolina and saying, hey, we might win, you are looking at what ifs. Oh, Arvold is here, out of town for work and in a hotel. Finally get to watch live. Well, thank you for that. And you are always welcome again, by the way, and that's for the rest of you, if you can't catch the whole thing live, or even if you want to support the channel, go on and pick up Spotify. Contemporary with J. Edgar is the search term for that. And listen to the episode. Put it on mute and let it play in the background somewhere. Or if you're on Apple Podcasts, even if you download and delete it, that counts as a listen for me. And that does help, again, move us up. So we've got that. You can watch the replays on YouTube. And again, in the Discord, the announcement is going to be there every Wednesday morning when I do the re-upload, because with some internet connectivity issues, of course, I private the live stream once it's done, and I re-upload it as a video to YouTube, because that helps promote it back out that helps make it more promotable as well. But yes, welcome Arvold. And Nikki Haley is going absolutely nowhere. Let's keep going. To the big news of the week from Politico. States can't get Trump off the ballot, Supreme Court says. And the tears have flown. From Zach Montellaro, Josh Gerstein, and Kyle Cheney. States have no authority to remove Trump from the 2024 presidential ballot. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously on Monday. Let me repeat that sentence again. States have no authority to remove Trump from the 2024 ballot. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously. Pay attention to that, because we're going to come back to that a little bit later once we see the crying and the gnashing of teeth. The justices did not weigh on the fraught question of whether Trump engaged in insurrection by attempting to subvert the 2020 election results or stoking the violence on January 6th, because he didn't. But the High Court ruled in an unsigned opinion that only Congress, not the states, can disqualify a presidential candidate under the Constitution's insurrection clause. The High Court's decision overturns a Colorado ruling that would have removed Trump from the ballot there, and it spells doom for a slew of other state-level challenges to Trump's eligibility under the interpretation of the 14th Amendment provision that says people who engaged in insurrection after taking an oath to support the Constitution are disqualified from holding office again. The result, which came one day before the Super Tuesday primaries, was expected. During oral arguments on February 8th, justices across the ideological spectrum signaled they were uncomfortable with allowing individual states to assess the eligibility of a presidential candidate accused of insurrection. Okay, that's getting actually a little bit old. Monday's 13-page opinion echoed that concern. Allowing the states to make that judgment could result in an inconsistent and dangerous patchwork of conflicting rulings, with a candidate appearing on some states' ballots but not on others, the courts wrote. I mean, that's what it's like being in a third party, though, too, you have to keep in mind. An evolving electoral map could dramatically change the behavior of voters, parties, and states across the country in different ways and at different times, the court's principal opinion said. No individual justice was listed as the author of that opinion. Instead, the opinion was labeled as a per curiam, a legal phrase meaning on behalf of the court. Nothing in the Constitution, the opinion continued, requires that we endure such chaos, arriving at any time or different times up to and perhaps beyond the inauguration. The three liberal justices wrote a separate opinion saying they agreed with the result, but but that they would have issued a narrower ruling that left open the possibility of federal courts disqualifying Trump or other candidate alleged to have engaged in insurrection. Although federal enforcement of Section 3 is in no way at issue, the majority announced novel rules for how the enforcement must operate. Justice Sotomayor, Kagan, and Brown-Jackson wrote in their first concurrence, referring to the section of the 14th Amendment that contains the insurrection clause. The court's main opinion, those three justices wrote, reaches out to decide Section 3 questions, not before us, and to foreclose future efforts to disqualify a presidential candidate under that provision. In a sensitive case crying out for judicial restraint, it abandons that course. The court's main opinion referenced the January 6th Selfie Fest only in a recitation of the chronology of the case in the lower courts, but otherwise did not discuss any of it in its analysis, nor did the court assess Trump's role in the attack, a central aspect of the case of Colorado. So, I have a lot of issue with the way that this was decided. I have no issue with the direction the decision went. That goes to our friends on the left, who we will mock furiously in just a bit. But I have no issue with the way that I do have issue with the way that this was decided, because this should have been an easy and open and shut case. Donald Trump, as a private citizen, having never been convicted of the crime of insurrection, cannot be denied life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness. In this case, liberty being the ability to run for an office that is supposed to be by the people, for the people. Therefore, Colorado can suck it. That's the decision that should have been made. And it does feel like there was a lot of dancing around to try to avoid saying that in those words. Maybe not saying Colorado can suck it, but you get the gist of where we're going with this. It almost seems like they were trying to avoid bringing the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment Section 1 into the case. Instead, talking about the patchwork and trying to prevent states like Texas and Wyoming from removing Biden from the ballot. And that seems to be what was at play in the majority of this and the decisions that we were seeing here. So, the outcome, of course, is the outcome that we need to see, because we don't need to see people disqualified who have been denied due process of law. Just like we do for anything else. If due process of law is gone, then yes, people will start taking up arms. If you can suddenly be in prison for having the wrong political opinion, because that's what happens when you take away due process of law. But regardless, they came to the correct outcome of this, so I have less of a problem, but still, again, a little bit of issue with the way that this was decided. Fox News, of course, having to take a victory lap over the fact that it was unanimous as well. We'll skip this one because Politico did a very good job of explaining that one. Bringing Maine into focus as well, because Maine was the other major state that had this on the ballot. Let's get the live chat back up here too, by the way. I've had that up. That helps make it more promotable as well. That's my voice. We don't want that. Well, apparently you guys want that, but I don't want to hear it twice. That's the thing. Let's see what we got here. Luke Wee is here too. Man, we got a full house tonight. Luke Wee is here. Did your parents like Hoover or something? Actually, I was named for my first name, which again, that's not said on the internet. That has nothing to do with my parents, though. That has to do with an old girlfriend that was stalking me. So my first name is not on the internet, and my middle name is actually my dad's first name. So that's where the J. Edgar comes from. But yeah, we're not going to put my last name out there either, because Mom and Dad didn't ask to be in this arena. So that's the long and short of that. Vong said judicial restraint is a bullshit concept in toto. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. And where was the judicial restraint in the original ruling of the Colorado Supreme Court? Well, the orange man is bad. You have to remember that. A few lurkers over on Rumble too. Pop in and say hi, Rumble people. All right, from CBS 13, WGME. on your side. Supreme Court ruling allows votes to count for Trump on Maine's primary ballot, from Mal Meyer. Votes cast for former President Trump during Maine's primary will count because of a U.S. Supreme Court ruling on Monday, and of course because it's the right fucking thing to do. The justices ruled a day before the Super Tuesday primaries that states cannot invoke the post-Civil War constitutional provision to keep presidential candidates from appearing on ballots. That power resides with Congress. The court wrote in an unsigned opinion. The outcome ends efforts in Colorado, Illinois, and Maine, and elsewhere to kick Trump, the frontrunner for the party's nomination, off the ballot because of his attempts to undo his loss in the 2020 election to Democrat Joe Biden, culminating in the January 6th selfie fest. None of which actually happened, of course. The Colorado Supreme Court previously ordered the Secretary of State to exclude Trump from the primary ballot and disregard any write-in votes for him. But Monday's decision from the Supreme Court reverses the lower court's judgment. I'm going to talk about that in just a sec. Let's talk a bit about Maine. We're disappointed, said Benjamin Gaines, an attorney who represented 3 Maine challengers. 5 Mainers challenged Trump's eligibility to become president, and again because of his alleged role in January 6th. That it's never been proven because he's never been convicted, of course, but you know that already. This went before Maine's chief election official late last year. I think the Secretary of State did her job and followed the Maine statutes, Gaines said. A group of Mainers argued that under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, Trump would not be allowed to hold office again because he had participated in an... Can I get away with one more? Oh, fuck it, of course I can. It's my show. Insurrection! We got a good idea at oral arguments that was going to be the way they wound up, Gaines said, referring to the justices. I didn't really expect it to stand. I wasn't all that surprised when I saw the Supreme Court ruled against it, said Graham Morgan, a Maine Democrat. So, yeah. They're disappointed, but I mean, the due process thing comes in off this too, but they're even coming out and saying, like, we're not allowed to do any write-ins for any of this as well. But all this again hinges on the fact that, I mean, we've got the attempts to undo the loss in the 2020 election, which it didn't happen. We have no conviction. And I mean, there are plenty of people who saw the people breach the Capitol before Trump even stopped speaking. So Maine can come out here. From Newsweek, Trump's forward reaction after Supreme Court ruling. From Nick Mordowanek. Former President Trump was elated to learn that the U.S. Supreme Court has reversed a decision in Colorado, allowing the Republican frontrunner for the 2024 nomination to remain on the state's primary ballot. Big win for America, Trump wrote on Monday morning on Truth Social. The decision also applies to ballots cast in all states that have attempted to remove the Donald. It was handed down just one day before Super Tuesday, which Trump and Haley would face off in 15 states that provide the former president with a massive delegate lead. He also gave a speech fairly shortly after that, and MSNBC cut it. So it's not just those 4 words, which this was a big win for America. But we'll look at the clip of the speech that MSNBC had to cut off, and I'll talk a bit about the rest of the speech because I watched it live right before we got started.
President has to be free. A president has to be, if the president does a good job. I did. Some people would say a great job.
Okay, The White House has not had any coordination with the DOJ on the prosecutions regarding Donald Trump. This is totally separate. It's a special counsel. The special counsel decided to bring charges. In terms of the Fonnie Willis stuff, I believe that Nathan Wade testified he was making more money before he started to work for Fonnie Willis down there. Let's go back to Gary.
President has to.
Yeah, they can't come back and let him come out and say this. And there's a lot on this speech, which was very rambling, it was very long, and it missed a lot of the point. It was, again, a lot of bellyaching about the prosecution and the persecution against him, which, I mean, is okay, but focus on the fact that the Constitution was upheld and the Fifth Amendment was upheld at this point. That's where your focus needs to be, instead of rambling about, okay, this is happening, and it's bad, and this is happening, and Benny Willis has it in for me, and Letitia James has it in for me. I do recommend, by the way, that you watch the speech in spite of my complaints about it. And I have it still up here. I can put it in the Discord. In fact, I'll do that right now. Put that up in articles for you guys. 5 more states have closed polling: Alabama, Maine, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. But that is in topic chat, where we're talking about what's happening with the election. And I'm going to put this in articles so you guys can go and see it. New York Post providing the recording of that. So once we're done here, we'll run over to the, you guys can run over to the Discord and go have a look and watch that speech. Highly recommended. Yeah, Dual Helix says, you're going to watch the geriatric try to do the State of the Union. We're going to watch that together right here. That'll be an announcement a little bit later on, but spoiler alert. I know it's been 2 weeks already, but no Final Fantasy X tomorrow. I'm going to do my normal Thursday chores tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we are going to sit down together and watch the State of the Union. In fact, I got to reach out to KTZed because we have a yearly tradition of watching the State of the Union together on stream. And I want to see if she's still down for that. So yeah, that'll actually happen here on this channel. Place your bets if it'll be pre-recorded. No, they'll do it live. They'll jack him full of whatever CIA drugs they can get off him, but they'll do that live. They won't even let him talk. Funny Willis. All right. Falling Stars says the entire thing is a production, which is fact check true, by the way. Absolutely fact check true. Meanwhile, we have the Secretary of State that tried to put this whole thing into motion. Charles R. Downs says Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold is currently on MSDNC, crying about the Supreme Court. She's not taking the 9-0 Trump ruling well. Hang on. I have lost my live feed over on Rumble. Okay, we have our live feed back over on Rumble. There was a glitch in Chrome, and all of a sudden I had no live feed. But this is Jenna Griswold, the Secretary of State of Colorado, on MSNBC, and crying about the Supreme Court. She's not taking the 9-0 ruling well. Helix, I believe this is your Secretary of State.
My larger reaction is disappointment. I do believe that states should be able, under our Constitution, to bar oath-breaking insurrectionists. And ultimately, this decision leaves open the door for Congress to act, to pass authorizing legislation. But we know that Congress is a nearly non-functioning body. So ultimately, it will be up to the American voters to save our democracy in November.
But it won't be democracy if Trump wins, even if he wins the popular vote, which I'm not saying there's a big chance of that, but I'm saying it's at least within the realm of possibility at this point. I'm also not going to lie, she's kind of cute. Batshit out of her mind, which is also my type, but the dark hair and the light eyes and the kind of round face, that's the kind of girl I go for, typically. And yes, the batshit is included in that. And she got ripped up and down for this, including with the same word that I used, by the way. The Daily Wire reporting absolutely batshit. Colorado Democrat dragged for MSDNC melodrama over Supreme Court ballot ruling. Secretary of State Jenna Griswold took a wave of criticism after she first declared former President Trump ineligible to appear on her state's primary ballot, claiming that he was guilty of insurrection, and then complained that the Supreme Court had unanimously decided in Trump's favor. He was never found guilty of insurrection. He was never given due process of law. We have rules in this country. Yeah, that's a girl I invent a new name for. Digital twin, maybe. Griswold's initial order, citing Section 3, the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, stated Trump was guilty of insurrection despite the fact that neither Congress nor any court have found him to be so. And for that reason, he was ineligible to appear on Colorado's primary ballot. States have no power under the Constitution to enforce Section 3 with respect to federal offices, especially the presidency. Griswold made an appearance on MSDNC shortly after the ruling was handed down, which the court declared states have no power under the Constitution to enforce Section 3 with respect to federal offices, especially the presidency. Is this the same clip, or is this a longer one?
My larger reaction is...
No, that is the same clip. I think. Go back here.
My larger reaction...
Nope, that is the same clip. It's just this one's actually a few seconds longer than this one is. So we watched this already. My larger reaction is disappointment, Griswold told KTZed. I do believe that states should be able, under our Constitution, to bar oath-breaking insurrectionists. Well, then convict him. And ultimately, this decision leaves open the door for Congress to act to pass authorizing legislation, but we know that Congress is a nearly non-functioning body, so ultimately, it will be up to the American voters to save our hegemony in November. Critics were quick to point out that if Griswold were truly interested in saving our democracy, the American voters should have been the first choice rather than a backup plan, only adopted after her attempt to enforce her own will had been thwarted. Truth has been getting inverted in this cyclic rate lately, and I'm just glad regular people are seeing through it. Absolutely batshit that a person who unilaterally removed a candidate from the ballot can worry about a democracy being subverted and not get laughed right off the screen. Well, of course she doesn't get laughed off the screen. I mean, think about it. We have to protect our democracy by not allowing people to vote for the people that they want to vote for. God, how they hate leaving democracy up to the voters, actor Nick Searcy said. Got to admire a fascist crying that they tried to seize power to save democracy, Derek Hunter said. In other words, we tried to substitute our own leftist opinion for the will of the voters and got smacked down, said Tim Murtaugh. So, good. This person does not deserve to be taken seriously at this point. But the new plan is coming and formulating already, of course, because it's a day that ends in Y, and if they leave Trump on the ballot, then he might win. Oh my God, people might vote for him. The Mogwai says, stop that. Next thing you say, there was no insurrection. I think I've said that like 5 times tonight. Dual Helix says, incoming hegemony. Yep. Dual Helix has been following my X account long enough to know that that's exactly where I go all the time with that. Democrats eye new way to get Trump off ballot after Supreme Court loss. From John Jackson. Jamie Raskin, because it couldn't be anybody else, a Maryland Democrat, on Monday said he's working with colleagues on legislation that could bar someone who committed an insurrection from holding office. Raskin made the announcement after the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that former President Trump should appear on the primary ballot in states that have challenged his presidential candidacy. I'm working with a number of my colleagues, including Democratic Representatives Deb Wasserman Schultz and Eric Swalwell, to revive legislation to set up a process by which we could determine that someone who committed an insurrection is disqualified by Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, Raskin said on an appearance on CNN. Well, see, the thing is, and by the way, we've got the Supreme Court must not be the final word on disqualifying Trump. Because, of course, they're saying that. There is already a process where you can determine that someone who committed insurrection is disqualified by Section 3. If that person is in office currently, then you hold a vote in the House that comes on a simple majority to say, we find that the defendant has committed X crime, Y crime, and Z crime, and therefore he is hereby impeached to face trial in the Senate. And then you take it over to the Senate, who will vote by a 2/3 majority to convict or acquit. And you get 2/3 of the Senate to vote in your favor. There's already a process to do this. You don't have to make a new one. And then we just go over a review of what it is that we've already seen. So it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to pass in the Senate. Now, for the fun part. The part we've all been waiting for. Let's make fun of the leftoids. Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann went so far over the edge. I actually think it might have been an act. That's how far over the edge Keith Olbermann went. The Supreme Court has betrayed democracy. Its members, including Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor, have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. And collectively, the court has shown itself to be corrupt and illegitimate. It must be dissolved because nothing says democracy and will of the people like dissolving the body. That keeps the other two branches in check. The redheaded libertarian coming out and saying, dissolve the separation of powers to save democracy. Scott Presser says, did you just say 3 women aren't able to read? The party of women strikes again. And we'll just grab this one from Josie so we can come back and look and say that he got roundly ratioed over this. 39,000 comments to 10,000 likes. 10 million views because most of us were sharing this around over his unhingedness. And it didn't stop there, by the way. Today was probably one of those, oh no, delete everything hangovers. Well, it's still up. When he was called out, by the way, Gunther Eagleman, at Gunther Eagleman on X says, cry more, 9-0. And Olbermann says, those aren't tears, fascist. They're urine. I'm sure you enjoy being bathed in it. Which, again, makes me question, is Keith Olbermann saying that that he has piss on his face? Did he do a couple rounds with R. Kelly? Is that what's going on? No, he'd be too old for R. Kelly. If you want to get peed on by R. Kelly, you have to be 14 or under. But oh my god. And he went on and on. This is actually, I think, the next slide that I have. This is part of the reason where I thought it was an act. By the way, fathead, if this court now grants Trump this hallucination of presidential immunity, it applies to Biden too. And he could arrest the justices and cancel the election, and you couldn't do shit about it. Which, this one. I screen grabbed this one and posted this just in case he deletes this one, because his handlers might actually come out and say, Keith, you can't put that online. We know that's exactly what we want, but you can't put this out online because people won't vote for us once they find out it's exactly what we want. No, that's exactly what they want him to do, is arrest the justices, cancel the election, and also, by the way, round up all the people that don't agree with them politically and put them in the boxcars and take them to the work camps. That's what people like Olbermann want. Helix says, the man is 2 sheets to the wind and found him a bump someone left him in the corner of his liquor cabinet. So that was Olbermann. The Clarence Thomas hate continued because I think most people didn't realize that, well, most leftoids didn't realize this was a 9-0 decision. And this was just based on evil Clarence Thomas. Daniel Goldman says, having recused from a prior case related to January 6 due to his wife's involvement, Justice Thomas's participation in Trump's ballot case is a shocking and intentional violation of his ethical obligations. So, what would have changed, Daniel Goldman? It would have been 8-0, not 9-0. What exactly is the difference? I think it was mayo was spicy. I don't know if I put that one on there or not. Said that this meant that this was time to pack the courts. How far do you want to pack the court? You'd have to add 10 to even remotely hope to get the decision that you want. And likely, it would have been 19-0 at that point. Sisson as well. Insurrection sympathizer Clarence Thomas ruled that insurrectionist Donald Trump can remain on the ballot in 2024. That should be the headline. Okay, well, what about Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson? This one got community noted, though. In a 13-page opinion, all 9 justices ruled on reversing the Colorado Supreme Court decision to keep Trump off their ballot. Justice Thomas was not the sole justice, which is one of the first helpful community notes I've seen in quite a while. Pressler again up on the top. The ruling was 9-0 and you attacked the black man. Go figure. And the last one, and then we're going to unfortunately move off this because we do have some more news to get to. And with the State of the Union, we're not going to get to have a second show this week. So where we leave it is where we leave it, unfortunately. Shifty Adam Schiff. The Supreme Court moved rapidly to clear Donald Trump to appear on the ballot. Will it move just as quickly to reject his false claims of immunity so he can appear in court? I hate to tell you this, Schiff, but there's a equal chance that this is 9-0 as well. Or will justice be delayed again and justice denied? There is an equal chance that this goes 9-0 against you. Why is Sisson even on the radar? Because he's a paid shill. They pay to have him on the radar. Yeah, Mogwai says Olbermann is a waste of space. Well, here my question is, and this has bothered me for a while, honestly. Why is who's arguably one of the more prominent sportscasters of my generation, and I'll admit probably one of the better ones, up until he lost his absolutely ever-loving mind. Why is he the foremost voice in politics at this point? Well, in Trump hatred, honestly. Olbermann was a good sportscaster. I won't deny him that. But just what he's done over the past, especially 2 years, has made him into a nub. All right, that's all the Trump news that we have. And now the unfortunate part, they're going to keep the government open. It's a short-term thing, and we're going to be having this argument again in a couple weeks. Eyewitness News, ABC 7, House and Senate leaders reach a deal to avert partial government shutdown ahead of Friday's deadline. From Jay O'Brien, Rachel Scott, Benjamin Siegel, Lauren Peller, and Allison Pecorin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to write one article. House and Senate leaders on Wednesday reached a bipartisan deal to avert a partial shutdown ahead of Friday's looming deadline. Can we have a total shutdown, and why do they have to open it back up? Under the terms of the deal, the House is expected to vote on Thursday on a temporary funding bill. The Senate will vote soon after. With Democratic support, the legislation is expected to pass the House. It could face procedural hurdles in the Senate if one member objects to expediting the voting process, potentially pushing the vote past the shutdown deadline. Well, they got past that already. If it passes, the deal would avert a partial shutdown this Friday of roughly 20% of the government. This is this past Friday, by the way. And create new funding deadlines, March 8th for that 20% and March 22nd for the remaining 80%. So, I mean, this is short term. Like, there's 3 more days to get through the first funding deadline. A March 8th deadline could leave President Biden delivering his State of the Union address the night before the deadline to avert a partial shutdown, which again, we'll be talking about that on Thursday. Chili for dinner. I like chili. I haven't had chili in a while. Once the factor meals are done, I know I'm going to make meatloaf. I might have to make some chili too. Kind of looking forward to that, actually. So, yep, they kept it open. They caved. They cucked. In good news. Are you ready for some good news? Are you finally ready for some good news? I was hoping that would be archived already. From CBS News, the Turtle Man himself. Not the chili turtle, but the Turtle Man. Mitch McConnell stepping down as Senate GOP leader, ending his historic 17-year run. Hold on. He's earned this. And he's not out of the Senate yet, but he's earned this at this point. From Kaya. From Kaya Hubbard. Minority Leader Turtleman McConnell has announced he's stepping down as the upper chamber's GOP leader after November elections, ending a 17-year run that made him the longest-serving party leader in Senate history, and often the most powerful Republican in Washington. McConnell, who turned 82 last week, announced his decision on the Senate floor on Wednesday. I always imagine a moment when I would have total clarity, but not in the way that I talked, of course, about the sunset of my work. A moment that I'm certain I have helped preserve the ideals I so strongly believe, he said. That day arrived. Leader McConnell, are you okay? That day arrived today. In emotional remarks, McConnell reflected on his 40 years in the Senate, saying that when he was first elected to the chamber in 1984, which means he has been in the Senate, by the way, as long as I have been alive. He never could have imagined becoming the longest-serving senator to represent Kentucky in the state's history. Mitch McConnell has been a senator literally my entire life. To serve Kentucky in the Senate has been the honor of my life. To lead my Republican colleagues has been the highest privilege, he said before announcing that this would be his last term as the Senate GOP leader. Well, it should be his last term in the Senate, too. I mean, come on, dude. You've been there for 40 years. President Biden praised McConnell for his career, saying that during the years they have worked together, the two could speak honestly and work to put the country ahead of themselves. And by that, they meant put themselves ahead of the country. American, the thing, man, is based on elected representatives coming together and bridging their different points of view, man, to find common ground on behalf of the American people. I'm proud that my friend Mitch, that I've called a Nazi so many times, and I've been able to do that for many years. Working together in good faith, man, even though we have many political disagreements. McConnell's work to confirm conservative justices and reshape the judiciary may well be his defining legacy. No, his defining legacy was putting untold amounts of money into the Alaska race, which was Republican versus Republican, while ignoring the Georgia race. During the Trump admin, he shepherded hundreds of conservative justices through the Senate confirmation process to secure them to lifetime appointments to the bench. He also oversaw the successful confirmation of 3 Supreme Court justices, cementing a conservative majority on the High Court. One of his most brazen political maneuvers came as majority leader in 2016, when he refused to consider Obama's nominee to replace the late Justice Scalia. Keeping the seat vacant allowed President Trump to nominate Gorsuch when he took office the next year. That was a good move. I will praise him for that, and I don't say very, very many kind things about McConnell, because I don't care for him. McConnell's grip on his conference has seemed to slip in recent months. Coinciding with Trump's march to the GOP nomination, the two have been at odds for years, with their relationship reaching a low point when McConnell condemned Trump after the Selfie Fest on January 6th. McConnell voted to acquit Trump in his impeachment trial, arguing it was unconstitutional to convict a former president on impeachment charges, which is, by the way, not true either, but he is out as leader, and, well, let's see him out as senator as well. When is his term up? '27. So he's not up this year. He's up next year. But because the leadership changes in every even year, then yeah, coming in by 2025, he won't be the leader anymore. Thank God. Now, who's going to replace him? I say Rand. You guys know where I stand on that, though. I'm not ever going to consider Ron Johnson as to be a viable leader for that, because Ron Johnson changes his opinions more than Mitch McConnell does. For political expedience and convenience, of course. When I say DeSantis licked his finger and put it up to see where the political wind was going, he learned that from Ron Johnson. But we have 3 Johns leading the race to succeed Mitch McConnell. And by the way, they're all terrible. The race to succeed Mitch McConnell atop the Senate GOP conference is on. While the shadow campaign has been going on for years throughout McConnell's record-setting tenure as leader, jockeying by potential successors has begun in earnest and is set to burst out into the open. Republicans are looking at a trio of senators: John Thune, no. John Cornyn, absolutely not. And John Barrasso. Fuck that. As the leading contenders to take over the longtime Republican leader, with a possible conservative challenger mixing in. On Thursday, Cornyn became the first of the three to formally announce his bid. I'm asking my Republican colleagues to give me the opportunity to succeed at Leader McConnell, he said in a statement. Throughout my time, I've built a track record of listening to colleagues and seeking consensus while leading the fight to stop bad policies that are harmful to our nation and the conservative cause. I don't know. Like I said, Rand is my choice, and that's really the only choice that I have for the Senate. I can't do it. I can't back almost anybody else in the Senate. But he's out. They're going to put somebody terrible up in his place. I know that they will. But also from the Hill, RFK Jr. backs Rand Paul as next Senate Republican leader. And I don't believe for a second that RFK Jr. wants to see Rand Paul be the next leader. I think that this is political and for his presidential campaign. I'll read a bit of this and then I'll explain why. From Tara Souter, Independent, Democrat, presidential candidate RFK Jr. announced his support for Rand Paul as the next Senate Republican leader. Mitch McConnell, who has served in the Senate for almost 40 years, announced that he'll step down in November. But part of public service is about knowing when to usher in a new generation, Kennedy said Wednesday in a post on X, highlighted by Mediaite. It's time to promote leaders in the D.C. who won't kowtow to the military contractors or push us deeper into foreign conflicts, Kennedy continued. We need representation who will prioritize American wellness over all else, and I believe Rand Paul will be an incredible successor. He's shown great judgment and has the grit to put hardworking Americans first. Now, RFK Jr. and I agree on one thing. That Rand Paul would be, but I don't see this as a genuine bid. That's the word I want to go with. I don't see this as a genuine bid by any stretch of the imagination. See, a part of the problem with RFK Jr. is that he has to lean in as hard as he can to his anti-vax thing. Because if people stop talking about the fact that he's anti-vax, they might notice the fact that he's been socialist, progressive Democrat for his entire life, and he's a gun grabber as well. He is anti-war. I'll give him that, but he's a gun grabber and he's a socialist, and I cannot get behind that. Then when that starts to come out and people start ignoring his anti-vax, then they're going to come back out and start to notice that maybe he shouldn't be the president or even run for office again. I just noted still follow Friday. Yeah, I do have... did my title not change on Twitch? I know I still have the War Never Changes up. So on mine I have Happy Stupid Tuesday. But yeah, I never took my tagline down. You're right. I screwed that up. I noticed it almost right away too. Okay, let's see here. Let's check up with the chat here with the rest of you. Yeah, I was referring to the tag. Yeah, the tag is still up there. I see that. Let's see. So Dual Helix says those 3 L Theater Club people think God chose them. Apparently, Dual Helix had a shot of tequila and chili for dinner, which I think is fantastic. I'm going to have some chili. Might pour it over some corn chips and have chili cheese nachos, which sounds fantastic, by the way. Apparently, he stood in a food line for 2 hours, got all kinds of food, which is good. I'm glad that that's out there for you. I might go volunteer there, which is also a fantastic thing. Be careful with the mead. I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's fighting juice. I can't drink it, or I'll try to fight everyone in about a block radius and lose every time. I have actually never had mead. I learned about it when I got into this. Welch's 100% Concord grape juice makes really good wine, though. I'll look into that for like a test run. Add about a half cup of sugar and brew it right in the bottle with a slightly loose lid. Just regular bread yeast works fine. I have heard mixed opinions about using regular bread yeast. I've actually heard people say that it makes it taste like bread. I would try it just to see what happened, of course. But I use Lelvin yeast, a specific wine yeast. I confuse mead and hard cider. I meant the hard cider is the fight juice. See, I can handle my hard cider because when I first learned about hard cider, I never tried it before, so I went out and got a couple cases of it, and I liked it so much, of course, I started making it. So, there's our McConnell news. Kyrsten Sinema as well is on her way out the door. From CNN, Kyrsten Sinema announces she is retiring from the Senate. Mogwai says, I will have the tequila. He says, I used bread yeast. It made me loaf around. Ha ha ha. Kyrsten Sinema announces she's retiring from the Senate. From Manu Raju, Claire Ferran, and Morgan Rimmer. Senator Sinema, an Arizona independent, announced Tuesday she will leave the Senate at the end of her term this year. A move that will shake up the battle for control of the chamber in November and remove a key player who's been central to the major negotiations in Congress. Sinema has been an influential yet polarizing figure in the Senate and has frequently worked to broker a compromise between Democrats and Republicans. In announcing her decision, come on, man, I'm going to start to talk like Biden here, man. Her decision not to seek re-election, the Arizona senator said, I believe in my approach, and it's not what America wants right now. Sinema's decision to take her out of the fight for her seat in an extremely competitive state. Democratic Rep. Ruben Gallego of Arizona and former Arizona Republican gubernatorial nominee Carrie Lake are among the most closely watched candidates in the Senate race. And those are two people, by the way, that I don't want to see in the Senate. And this is saying something. I think Sinema would be superior to either one of them. The race in Arizona will be one of the most important in November. For determining the majority in the Senate, the state voted for President Biden by a slim margin of less than 1% honk honk in 2020. Chuck U. Schumer endorsed Gallego in the race. Following Sinema's announcement she will retire, we are fully behind his candidacy and will look forward to winning this race with him in 2024 and defeating Carrie Lake, Schumer said of Gallego. Steve Daines argued on CNN that Sinema's decision not to run for re-election will help Lake's candidacy. It actually might. That one's going to be really close to call, though, unfortunately. So, Sinema's out. We'll see what happens with that. We've got the Texas news coming up, and I think we're probably going to have to start winding it down after that, which, I mean, we've got most everything else. There are a couple that I want to touch on before we get out of here. But the Texas one, I especially want to get to. So, in a tale of shot, and chaser, we'll call it that, Greg Abbott touts huge news about Texas border. From Newsweek to start, Thomas Kika reporting. No, we're doing the State of the Union on Thursday. We'll be here on Thursday, but we'll be doing State of the Union, so we can't do contemporary. Although I've been known to, on State of the Union, I pop up and do a pop-up contemporary. But we'll see if KTZed comes in for that or not. Greg Abbott on Monday hailed huge news from an appeals court ruling pertaining to the U.S.-Mexico border. In recent months, Abbott and his admin have been engaged in a heated back and forth with federal forces over who has the authority at the southern border. Abbott, like many others in the GOP, has characterized the recent influx of migrants crossing into the U.S. as a crisis, has attempted to leverage more of the authority for his state government to police the situation. Legal experts have countered the Constitution grants the federal government authority over matters concerning immigration. On Thursday, a lower court in Texas blocked the implementation of the state's legislature, Senate Bill 4, which gave the authority sweeping authority to arrest and detain migrants crossing the border into the U.S. illegally. In his ruling, David Allen Ezra warned that following the law to stand could open the door to each state passing its own version of immigration laws, where's the downside to this argument? On Saturday, however, the Fifth Circuit issued a temporary halt to that lower court ruling. The decision will not go into effect until Saturday, March 9th, giving the federal government a week to argue for the blockage of Texas Senate Bill 4 before the U.S. Supreme Court. Without any intervention from the highest court in the land, the law will then be implemented. Federal appeals courts allow Texas immigration law to take effect, the governor wrote. Law enforcement officers in Texas are now authorized to arrest and jail any illegal immigrants crossing the border. So, the announcement here, number one, they passed the law, and then the lower court blocked it. Now they, at this point, the point that this article is out, can put it into effect, which a lot of people celebrated almost immediately. Not surprising, almost immediately, CBS News says Biden admin asked Supreme Court to block Texas from arresting migrants under SB 4. The Biden admin on Monday asked the Supreme Court to block Texas from enforcing the immigration law known as SB 4. That would allow the state enforcement officials to arrest migrants suspected of crossing the U.S. without authorization. One of the most far-reaching state immigration laws in modern history, SB 4 would empower Texas law enforcement to stop, jail, and prosecute migrants on the state criminal charges of illegal entry or re-entry. It would also allow the state judges to issue de facto deportation orders against suspected violators of the law. And it was granted, of course. Supreme Court temporarily blocks Texas law allowing the state arrest of immigrants. Now, as I said before, this law was technically never in place. There were a lot of people taking a victory lap yesterday because of the fact that the Fifth Circuit blocked it. But it still had 4 more days before it would have ever taken effect and the first arrest could have been made, which I'm sure that Texas law enforcement already had a list of people that they were ready to go for to do so. But within 4 hours, it was back to being blocked. The Mogwai says, if it keep people from moving to South Carolina, I'm all for state immigration laws. Can we use the state immigration laws to kick out Graham, asking for a district? Well, this would be kicking him out of the country, not interstate travel. That is still free under the Constitution. And will remain free for, as far as I can remember at least. So, this law is back on hold. We will see what the appeal happens with that and where it goes. Let's get a couple more of these done and out before we head out of here for the night. This one I just thought was funny. John Fugelsang says, 26,313 pregnant rape victims in Texas since the GOP took abortion rights away. 26,313 American citizens forced by Republicans in just one state to be pregnant against their will by rapists. That's Trump's America. That's what MAGA fights for. Before I go on and read the rest of this, I will remind you that that would mean that 1 in 50 women in Texas are currently pregnant by rape. Not just 1 in 50 are currently pregnant, but 1 in 50 are pregnant by rape currently. And if that is the issue, you have a bigger problem. You have a much, much bigger problem But Matt Keck, 24601, says, how on earth do we have 26,313 rapists on our southernmost state? You know, the one closest to the border. And I had to jump back in and say, I'm guessing that John doesn't want you to think about that detail. Even if that number were to be remotely true, by the way. And that is, by the way, that not only would it be 1 in 50 women in Texas, but every single instance of forcible sexual assault. I should probably stop using that R word on YouTube, by the way, because that's a good way to get algorithmically demoted. But every single time, it would also have to take. And the Mogwai says, there are way too many guns for that math to work. Yeah, that's the other thing. 1 in 50 women pregnant by forcible sexual assault. At the same time, in a state with the most guns per capita and the most desire to use those firearms. Are you seeing why some of this doesn't math here, folks? Gavin Newsom is facing another recall attempt. Gavin Newsom survived the recall in 21. Now there's a Republican attempt to get him out of office again. The group Rescue California is once again trying to oust Newsom, accusing him of abandoning the state to advance his presidential ambitions. Supporters must get nearly 1.4 million signatures to put it on the ballot. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because here's what's going to happen. They're going to get the signatures. They're going to have the recall effort. People are going to vote yes on the recall effort, and then they're going to turn around and mysteriously vote to put Gavin Newsom back in office, just like happened the last time. Honk honk. Our COVID news from the Hill, CDC ending the 5-day COVID isolation guidance. From Nathaniel Weissel. The CDC is no longer recommending Americans stay home from work or school for 5 days after testing positive for the pinko pox. A major shift in policy that comes as much of the country has moved on from the height of the pandemic. Which I'm pretty sure the only people who are even testing at this point are virtue signalers. I don't even know where you can get a test anymore. I've never taken a test. I did have it, and I know I had it. The symptoms all lined up, and I did take the 2 weeks off work that I needed, which was actually kind of nice. Except I was climbing the wall by the end of the 2 weeks, because it wasn't 2 weeks off work that I could go and do the things that I wanted. It was 2 weeks off of work that I was stuck on the couch and not doing anything. I was doing contemporary. I was up there for that. I got up every morning, did contemporary, and pretty much went back to bed after that. And not even in my bed. I had to sleep on the couch for the entire time because the body aches were so bad. And I have a firm bed. I have an insanely firm bed. And there was no way I could sleep in it when I had the body aches. None. But the CDC guidance is in. Trust the science. They tell you can treat it like the flu. I gotta say the rest of it we gotta hold off onto another one. And this is also including the Deer Creek stuff, which might have to go until next week because again, reminder, and we'll make the announcement now before we do things I like and things that I hate. Reminder, there will be no stream for Final Fantasy X tomorrow because I'm going to do all my regular Thursday chores, and then on Thursday we are going to watch the State of the Union on this channel. Look for announcements in the Discord and on X for how we're going to organize it. Typically, I go half an hour before, and KTZed and I have a long-standing tradition of doing the State of the Union together. So typically we go for a half an hour before, talk about what we expect to see from this, and then watch it with as minimal of commentary as possible, and then stay for like a half an hour after the stream. So or after the State of the Union, and talk about what we saw. So that is coming up on Thursday. So that's why we can't have a contemporary on Thursday, obviously. We will see what is going to happen with the rest of this. But we're going to finish off with the rules of acquisition and things that I like and things that I hate. And we've got a random selection of that as well. So, we're running out. Like, we can see the bottom of the page while looking at what we see here. So, we went on the 272nd rule of acquisition from Star Trek Online last week. Always inspect the merchandise before making a deal. The 280th rule of acquisition from the DS9 novel Ferenginar, satisfaction is not guaranteed. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Here's the thing. A lot of times people will look at something and try to put effort into something to make profit off of it, or to come back out and make it better, to try to make more profit off of it. But at some point you look at it and say, this is working well, I'm making good steady money off of it, or it's bringing me good steady satisfaction on what I have for it. Why would I want to change it? Why would I want to fix it? And that's one thing you have to remember. There is a point where you always strive for improvement. If you're not improving, you're going backwards. I said that yesterday, in fact, in a meeting that I had. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. But there comes to a point where you have to look at the situation as well and say, is there a point to moving forward? Am I doing well enough for the situation I'm in right now? And could moving forward be a detriment at this point? If it isn't broke, don't fix it. That's a very, very important one to look at here. So that is your 280th rule of acquisition. Let's do a couple things that I like and a few things that I hate. Thing that I like today. Typically, if I do something, either start something or finish something in media, I come out and talk about it and things that I like. And last night, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, when I had a brief bit of insomnia, I finished the book Starship Troopers from Robert A. Heinlein. Something, of course, that I should have done a long time ago, according to my libertarian friends. But it was definitely a very, very enjoyable book. There was a lot of philosophy in it. Now, the thing with Starship Troopers is it really does read like a philosophy textbook in many parts of it. Some of it gets a little bit dry, but it's engaging enough with the B plot, the war that's going on, and watching John Rico go through his training and go through his officer training at the same time. It intersperses the philosophy deep enough that you take in the philosophy without just sitting and doing a dry study off of that. It's a very good book. If you haven't read it already, and I know that I'm late to the party, I recommend it. I've never seen the movie, but now that I've read the book, now I want to see the movie, obviously. So it was actually written in 1959, so it's a relatively old book too. So a lot of the ideas of service guarantees citizenship in a society where unless you go into the military, you don't have a say in things, you don't have to vote, you can go your entire life being taken care of, but you don't get a say in society. Coming out to a society that never has an uprising because of the fact that if you're going to uprise against the people with power, you're uprising yourself against the entire military. For a group of people who didn't want to come in, didn't care enough to have a voice in society, to serve and learn how to stand up to that military themselves. And probably butchering the philosophy in this, by the way, but it is definitely worth reading. It's a short book. It's only a couple hundred pages. There's a lot of morality into it. There is a lot of philosophy. There's a lot of education to it. It's on Kindle. I think it's like $5 on Kindle right now. I know I bought it a while ago, but I think it's like $5 on Kindle right now if you guys want to go check it out. And again, if you haven't read it, and now that I have read it, I will see the movie. Because that was an important one for me, as I hadn't read it, so I didn't want to watch the movie and get spoilers. I always want to read the book first. So there it is, Starship Troopers. Other things that I like today. I promise at the top of the show. Here it is, folks. My first bottle of what will be consumable liquid. Now, I bottled this on Sunday night, but I back sweetened it with corn sugar, which will re-ferment and make the carbonation in the hard cider. It also will make it sweet. I did taste a little bit of this before I back sweetened it. It is insanely dry. If you ever make a hard cider or a wine or anything and you don't like dry, you're gonna have to look for ways to back sweeten, especially if you're going with the full fermentation, because I mean, after 2 weeks, all the sugar is out of this at this point. Now, the sugar is back in, of course, because I added it to make it fizzy, because I like fizzy cider. But yes, next Sunday I'll actually be with my niece and nephew. So I don't know if I'll be able to drink this on stream or not, but I do want to pop one of these open for you guys on stream and try it with you, live, to see how well I did. And if I fail, I'll know it right away. But hard apple cider. And I've already got another batch going too, so it's here. It's actually a product. I can put a label on this, and well, I can't sell it because those pesky distribution laws. And I say so much nasty stuff about the government on my stream that they're going to be looking for something to bust me with. I can't do this one under the table, unfortunately. Not with a semi-controlled substance, but yeah, my very first product ever. This is one of the hobbies that I have enjoyed so thoroughly. This is like first getting into video games. Levels of enjoyment for this one. And I can see myself doing a lot more of this. And yes, getting the license and doing distillation as well. So, we'll figure out when I can come back and sit down with you guys and drink that and try it for the first time. I'm excited. I'm very excited. If with the back sweetening, it tastes just as good as it did, as dry as it was before. I've made an amazing product. Now, one of the things I have noticed, and I specifically got a siphon with a filter, but apparently it's not fine enough, because I can still see there's a bit of sediment in the bottom, a bit of the lees. I need to get a much finer filter for that, so I got to figure out how I'm going to do that, and maybe talk with people who've done the trade before. But yeah, first tastable product. Everything else it'll take a couple months yet. I know I've got my chart here on my alcohols by volume. Not for my first batch of wine, obviously, because I didn't know that I had to measure while the sugar was still in it for specific gravity. But I've also got my dates for my next batches here. The mead, that's going to get bottled on 4/7, so I may have some of that ready to go the next time I go to Georgia. I probably will, actually. And then my honey or my pineapple wine, that's not going to be ready. I know that by the time I go down there. And I'm going to make one more set of apple wines, because the ones that are in the cabinet I want to keep forever. If this does take off, you'll have literal first bottles from a nationwide distillery and distribution center that may go for the millions later on. That may be a good way to leave a nest egg for the kids if I ever have kids. We'll see. Alright, other things that I like. Whenever we say we're running out of a resource and we can't do it anymore, and we're unsustainable, and we're just too greedy as humans, we do manage to find another store of that resource. Helium, which we use in several industrial applications, as well as making balloons stay upright, was starting to run out, they were saying. And then we find another massive supply. Fox Business, helium discovered in Minnesota as U.S. supplies dwindle. Get the live chat back up here. From Steven Saras. A potential helium reservoir was discovered in Minnesota last week after drillers bored deep beneath the forest floor of the state's Iron Range as supplies of the noble gas dwindle in the U.S. Pulsar Helium, a Canadian-based company, announced the news in a news release on Thursday that its team encountered gases with concentrations of up to 12.4% helium when its drilling rig reached a total depth of 2,200 in Topaz Project drill site. Helium concentrations above 0.3% are considered economically viable. Thomas Abraham James, Pulsar's president and CEO, said he's delighted about the outstanding result. It's a big day for helium exploration, confirming the original discovery of the new jurisdiction of Minnesota. I look forward to keeping the market updated with further results as they're received, Abraham James said. The concentration was measured with a mass spectrometer at the drill site, and samples of the collected gas will be sent to specialist gas laboratories for full molecular composition, removal of atmospheric contamination, and isotopic characterization, the company said. Helium's unique qualities make the gas an important and desired resource. While known as a lightweight gas that can fill balloons and blimps, helium can also take a liquid form that acts as a coolant for superconducting magnets needed to operate MRIs and the manufacturing of semiconductors. The gas also has applications in the defense industry, from rocket engine testing to air-to-air missile guidance systems and more. So, a lot of uses for this, not just making your balloon upright. And if this is a true concentration of 12.4%, it looks like it actually might flood the market a little bit. We'll see. But I'm happy to see stuff like this. And in one that would be surprising, because typically conservative people don't go for the renters. But when fairness is fair, renters are securing six-figure wins against landlords, from Juliana Kaplan and Eliza Relman. About a decade ago, Danielle's life changed, rather. She and her partner at the time lived in a small apartment in Cobble Hill, a hip brownstone in Brooklyn, paying about $2,650 a month in rent. It was their first ever New York City apartment, and Danielle, whose last name is known to Business Insider, but withheld for privacy reasons, said they understood that, generally, New York is going to be heinously expensive, like other new renters in the area. They were unsavvy when it came to apartment costs. Then, 2 years into living there, Danielle requested the rent history and learned that they were paying over $2,000 more than what the previous tenant had paid in rent. The unit was rent stabilized, meaning it was one of about 1 million homes in the city where rent increases are regulated by the state. However, Danielle said the landlord told them that the unit was not stabilized when they signed their lease. Eventually, Danielle and her partner won a $150,000 settlement from the landlord, according to a copy of the lawsuit viewed by Business Insider, and the stipulation that they would move out of their apartment. Now, I am in full agreement that rental prices should meet both the supply and the demand, and the free market should take effect. But once the government has intervened, you can't just come back and say, no, we're just going to charge you whatever the hell we want anyway, or, in this case, possibly what the market demanded. If you need to go back and work against the city council or your aldermen or people like that to get the law removed, then do that. Go the right way to it. But these people are choosing to live in your area based on the fact that these laws are there to make sure that it's possible for them to do so, however hard it hits the market. Make the change at the government. Tell them to repeal these stupid laws. But in this case, yeah, I mean, I'm glad for the fact that where the landlord was trying to make an extra buck in a place where he shouldn't have been able to do so, that there was able to do some recourse. This is a good use, by the way, of civil suits. Unlike using them to prosecute a crime that's outside the statute of limitations and has no evidence to it, this is a good use of civil suit. So I'm happy to see that. And now for a few things that I hate. Elizabeth Warren, of course. This is the second week in a row that Elizabeth Warren has made it into things that I hate. Elizabeth Warren trying to come back out and toot the horn of, oh, it's just the greedy businesses again. Elizabeth Warren, according to research from the Federal Reserve, I'll explain why that's a problem in a moment, corporate profits accounted for all inflation from around July 2020 to July 2021, and 41% of all inflation from July 2020 to July 2022. We must tackle corporate price gouging head on, and I'm staying in that fight. The Federal Reserve, who is responsible for the supply of money, the contraction of money, and the interest rates to try to either supply or contract the money supply, investigated themselves and found that they did nothing wrong with inflation. This is primo example of we investigated ourselves and found we did nothing wrong. And Elizabeth Warren is going to continue to go down this path as if it's gospel. Where instead, since the pinko pox started, we have printed 3/4 of the money supply that's ever been in circulation in this country, and wondered why the dollars are valued less and less and less every day. Other things that I hate. Jack Smith doesn't want jurors asked how they voted in 2020. Here's what he does want to know. Which, let's be completely honest and fair with this. This is his way of asking how they voted without asking how they voted, because that would actually probably be unethical for him to do. Virginia Kruta reporting for the Daily Wire. Special counsel Jack Smith does not want potential jurors to be asked how they voted in the 2020 election, but he does want the court to ask them whether or not they feel that President Biden's Justice Department has treated the former president fairly. In what actually might be a more partisan question than how they voted in 2020. According to a report published Thursday by the Washington Examiner, attorneys for the former president had called jurors to be asked about their political party affiliations in addition to whether or not they cast a vote in 2020. Judge Eileen Cannon asked for both Smith's team and Trump's to submit a jury questionnaire, which would allow the court to pre-screen potential jurors and rule out those who could not view the case in an objective manner, which I don't believe that there's really anybody in this country who can view this in an unobjective manner at this point. Among the questions the special counsel and his team objected to were the following. Are you registered to vote? If you answered yes to the prior question, are you registered with a particular party affiliation? And did you vote in the 2020 election? Smith's teams also nixed a question regarding whether or not potential jurors held negative views of politicians, but agreed along with the Trump team to go ahead with a question about whether they held negative opinions of police officers, the FBI, or judges and other court officers. Trump's team also noted objections to several questions, including the following. Have you read or heard about the FBI's execution of a search warrant at the Mar-a-Lago Club in August 2022, which is, your pool is pretty much the Amish at that point. Have you read about or heard about any statements by Mr. Trump about his investigation? Look, I don't know how you could ever get a possible unbiased jury off of this. I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's possible at this point. But this might get thrown out anyway. We'll continue to watch and see. From Vox under things that I hate. Do 1 in 5 Americans really believe Taylor Swift is in cahoots with Biden? Christina Paz reporting. Are Biden and Swift working in cahoots? The late night host Seth Meyers posed the question directly to the president on Monday, asking him to confirm or deny that there's an active conspiracy between him and this pop superstar. Where are you getting this information, man? Come on, that's classified. The two were joking about the latest conspiracy that's been bubbling under the surface for the last few weeks, that Swift, her tremendous popularity and her saturated media coverage in the lead up to the Super Bowl, is somehow government psyop to influence American minds into supporting Biden's re-election effort. Well, here's reality. That has been everybody in entertainment since the Kennedy days. That's not a new thing. I mean, Swift herself chose not to get involved into things until there was tremendous pressure put on her by her fan base. Now, do I think she's in cahoots with the Biden admin? No. But do I think that she believes everything on the stupid progressive agenda? Yes. Wait, no, that answer was no. Well, I've been on stream too long already. No, I don't believe that she is on board with the Democrat progressive agenda and the machine politics thing. But I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure from her audience for her to be on there, which is mostly college-educated, young, white women. The demographic most likely to vote for progressive or democratic causes. I don't think it's the government that's doing it. I think it's her fan base. And people who would, if they found out that she, a rural Tennessean, native by birth, were to be more interested in a more traditional lifestyle and more traditional politicians, then they would start to boycott her concerts. She's going for the safe business move without going to risk because, well, that's how she got to be a billionaire. And I don't believe for a second that she believes this crap either, so. But also, here's the reality. I don't care. Nothing that Taylor Swift says is going to change the way that I vote or view the world. Because I'm educated and informed enough to make my own decisions. And more people need to be. That is the big problem out there. But they're going to peddle the conspiracy theory. And, I mean, realistically, the most I ever hear about this is coming from leftoids. I don't think I've ever seen a MAGA account on X talk about Taylor Swift. But I've seen a lot of left-wing accounts talk about MAGA accounts talking about Taylor Swift. Alright, a couple more things that I hate. Yahoo News, for Business Insider, hackers threaten to release Trump documents from Georgia case if they don't get a ransom by Thursday. Oh no! Hackers set a ransom deadline of Thursday morning to release Fulton County court documents. They claim the documents include files related to the criminal case against Trump. The hacking group was shut down by law enforcement earlier this month, but they appear to be back up. And here's where I know that this is bullshit, by the way. In a message posted online on Saturday in both English and Russian, oddly enough, the hacking group called Lockbit said the stolen documents contain a lot of interesting things and Trump's court cases that could affect the upcoming US election. English and Russian. If you were a government agency trying to make people believe that anything that's affecting a court case is illegitimate, and you spent the last 5 years, almost 8 years at this point, almost a decade. Jesus, it's been since 2015. It's been almost 10 years since the golden escalator. If you've spent the last decade telling people that Russia is the source of all their political problems, and you wanted people to believe that the source of all their political problems was interfering in instances to try to get rid of your political enemy. I mean, this is the perfect roadmap to try to get the propaganda going. As soon as I saw English and Russian, I didn't believe this. Well, I had my doubts about it before, but as soon as I saw English and Russian, I didn't believe this for a second. But the February 29th deadline has come and passed, and we didn't get anything. So, yeah, I don't believe any of this. Bumble, the dating app, is to lay off about a third of its staff as it looks to drive growth. Well, if you want to drive growth, I would suggest not sucking. I've used this app, and it's probably one of the worst ones out there. from user experience. Mike Murphy reporting. Online dating company Bumble will lay off approximately 350 workers, about a third of its workforce, as part of a restructuring plan. The company said late Tuesday it aims to better align its operating model with future strategic priorities and intends to drive stronger operating leverage. Bumble shares fell 2.66%. Bumble shares fell about 15% on Wednesday. Bumble said it expects to incur around $20 million to $25 million of non-recurring charges from severance benefits and related costs, most of which will be recognized in the first half of this year. But don't worry, everybody. The economy is fine. And the tech sector is fine. Yeah, go to college for that tech degree again. That's the most that I can say that. Because we can't say the LTC sentence on YouTube. And let's finish out the last few have here. From the post-millennial. If you stand up to the Biden admin, the FBI is coming after you, but it's not politically aligned. FBI raids home of top aide to Eric Adams just days after the New York City mayor called for changes in sanctuary city laws. From Thomas Stevenson. The FBI searched the home of the top aide for the New York City mayor Eric Adams on Thursday in the Bronx. The aide, Winnie Greco, is the director of the Asian Affairs for New York City. This comes after the mayor has blamed Biden admin for the immigration crisis in the city and demanded the New York walk back its sanctuary city laws. This is sending a message. This is sending in the message of fall in line, do what the DNC tells you to, and do not buck the system, or you will pay the price. You're not safe by putting that D after your name. Unless you do what the machine tells you to, you will pay the consequences. This is an intimidation tactic, not just for Adams, but for all the Democratic governors around the country receiving immigrants from Texas and starting to have cold feet about the immigration law. Speaking of sending a message, New York Attorney General sues the world's largest beef producer over methane emissions and climate commitments. Once again, fall in line or the machine comes after you. Thomas Catenacci. Letitia James is suing JBS, the world's largest producer of beef, over the company's emissions and greenwashing by allegedly misleading the public about its environmental impact. Get out of New York. If you have a business in New York, follow Remington's lead. Get out of New York. It's time. In an announcement, James noted that beef production has the largest greenhouse gas footprint of any major food company, and the animal agriculture accounts for 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, according to James. JBUSA's various net zero pledges for 2030 and 2040 are therefore misleading and not feasible given the scope of its worldwide beef production operations. Get out of New York. JBS is centered in New York too, for reasons I can't even begin to imagine why. Hey, JBS. Wisconsin's calling. Well, I wouldn't advocate going to Milwaukee, Eau Claire, La Crosse, yes, maybe even Madison, are great places for corporate offices. Green Bay is a great place for a corporate office. I would get the fuck out of there in a hurry if it was me. Vong says, we've known it was dangerous to cross Biden for decades. I think that we first learned about the time Biden led the witch hunt against Clarence Thomas during his confirmation hearings. Anita Hill, I think it was, right? Is it Hill? I know it's Anita. I can't think of what the last name is. And I know it's not Sarkeesian, because that's a completely different controversy. And speaking of New York, before we head out of here, Hochul wants to fast-track migrants for government jobs. Get this moving quickly. So not only are you destroying jobs and creating more and more government jobs to get more people into the government fold, but now you want to go and fill those jobs with migrants as well. Golf clap for you. Ray Lewis. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is trying to fast-track migrants' employment processes for government jobs. New York Department of Civil Service proposed easing requirements like English language proficiency, education verification, and certification for approximately 4,000 positions earlier this month. The governor argues that employing immigrants is the solution to New York's crisis. But see, if a business leader does that, he's evil, unless he donates to the DNC. And then, oh, he's just fine. Open the border up for that guy. The department recommended adjusting entry-level positions to feature work requirements. By the way, taking more and more job opportunities away from recent graduates. More in line with migrants' qualifications, the job would have temporary titles contingent on the acquisition of required credentials to become permanent. Once they obtain the required qualifications, they're reachable on appropriate eligible lists if exams are required, and if their work performance has been satisfactory, agencies may appoint them to the target titles. The proposal reads. The positions state agencies seek to fill involve clerical and engineering support, human services, equipment repair, facilities operation, and food service duties. Wow. If this wasn't coming from one of the leading voices in the Democrat Party, do you know how racist this would be called? I mean, they would be screaming the R word as loud as they could. Facilities, operations, and food services, especially the last two. Lawn care and kitchen work. Jeez. They don't see it either. That's the worst part. Scratch a progressive for a little bit and you find racism. Alright, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Well, I'm out of news stories anyway. I can't do this anymore. I'm black-pilled again. How do I get this? How do I get here so fast all the time? I don't know. Here's my outro music. There it is. Ah, well, that was fun. I'm black-pilled. Maybe I will drink this hard cider before I go to... No, it's not ready yet. And I've got some commercial stuff over in the corner. If I want to get hammered, I could get hammered. But I do have to work in the morning, so I can't really get hammered either. But with that, we're done. We're out of here. Thanks, everybody who came by, hung out in the live chat. Remember, no stream tomorrow for Final Fantasy X. I'll be doing my chores tomorrow. And then we'll be doing the State of the Union on Thursday. So come back and join for that. Times to be determined. But we'd love to see you as always. Thanks again. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic night. Don't get blackpilled for this. And go enjoy the results of Super Tuesday. I haven't even looked to see what they are yet, with the exception of a little bit we did at the top of the show when we were talking about Super Tuesday. But, I mean, I know what's going to be coming out of this. And I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to enjoy seeing the meltdown on X. And we will see after tonight if Nikki Haley stays in or not. Coin flip. I'm going to say she is going to, because it still takes the attention away from the general election. So, take care. Have a fantastic night. Take care of each other. Come back and join me again next Tuesday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And have some dinner. Get some rest. Thanks again for coming off here. Remember, you can go back and catch, if you couldn't catch the whole thing, the replay on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Play Podcasts, and on Podbean's internal player as well. You can catch the replay on YouTube. That'll be uploaded tomorrow morning, ready to go. Check the Discord for the links, and we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.